kind these are either.
I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lincoln Lancaster County Planning Commission of May 15th, 2019. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, is available at the front of the chambers with the clerk. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. If you parked in the parking garage across the street to the north, the gate is open and no parking coupons are needed. And out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, the commissioners and the staff, cellular phone usage is not permitted in these chambers during any portion of this meeting. We will appreciate your cooperation. Please note that the Planning Commission action today is final on the following agenda items. Item 1.1C, waiver 19001. Item 1.2B, use permit 33E. Item 1.3B, county special permit 19018. Item 1.4, special permit 16020A. Item 1.5, special permit 19019. Item 2.1, preliminary plat 18002, and item 4.1C, special permit 19021. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or the County Board by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council or County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held May 1st, 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved, Campbell.
Second, Washington.
Ready to vote?
Okay, Beckius.
Abstain.
Okay. Campbell.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Core.
Yes.
Shear.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will ask Jerry to read all of the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Jerry, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
Thank you. I just first note that Commissioner Shear has declared a conflict of interest on agenda items 1.1A, 1.1B, and 1.1C, and therefore will be recusing himself from voting on the consent agenda. Item 1.1A is annexation 19003 to annex approximately 4.5 acres. The associated change of zone 19011 from AG to R1, and the associated waiver 19001 to waive the subdivision improvement requirements, all generally located at 6301 North 7th Street. Item 1.2A is change of zone 19009 from 02 to 03, and the associated use permit 33E to add additional property and increase the total allowable commercial floor area from 155,000 square feet to 175,000 square feet within the use permit area, both generally located at 6900 L Street. Item 1.3A is change of zone 19010 from AG to AGR and the associated special permit 19018 to allow for the development of a community unit plan for 3 lots on approximately 25.53 acres, all with associated waivers, all generally located at 13200 West Bluff Road. Item 1.4 is special permit 16020A to amend special permit 16020 to allow for the renovation and expansion of a non-conforming church, including waivers to setbacks on property generally located at 535 North 16th Street And item 1.5 is special permit 19019 to allow for the reconstruction of an existing garage on property generally located at 3335 Orchard Street. I would note that this is final action on items 1.1C, 1.2B, 1.3B, 1.4, and 1.5, unless appealed to the city council or the county board within 14 days. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these consent agenda items?
I don't see any.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on any of these items? If so, please stand and state that item.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I would I would like to pull 1.1A from consent. I realize it's attached to B and C, but I don't need to pull those.
I believe we've been advised in the past to pull all three.
Okay.
To have a separate public hearing together.
We'll pull all three then.
Okay. Items 1.1A, 1.1B, and 1.1C will be pulled from the consent agenda.
Thank you.
I move approval of the rest of the items on the consent agenda.
Second, Beckius.
Jerry, go ahead and.
Okay, Beckius?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Core.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0.
Should we still do the request for deferral before the,
Yes.
okay, so Jerry will now call the request for deferral.
Okay, we did receive a written request from the applicant for a 2-week deferral on item 2.1, preliminary plat 18002, to add 430 residential lots on approximately 152.1 acres more or less on property generally located at the southwest corner of West Old Cheney Road and South Folsom Street. This is final action on this item when it is before the Planning Commission in 2 weeks.
Move to defer to May 29th.
Second. You can have that one.
Yes.
Jerry, go ahead.
Okay. Beckius?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Core?
Yes,
Share.
he's not.
Or, I'm sorry, yeah, he's absent, sorry.
Is there anyone wishing to testify on this preliminary plat 18002 today rather than waiting until the May 29th hearing? Okay, so we will now proceed to public hearings.
Tracy, question, does,
This is the one that Dennis has a
Dennis
conflict
has
on.
that
Yes, he does have a conflict on
The
these.
staff will make a brief presentation. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. If, during your testimony, you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and/or included as part of the record, please provide that information to the clerk for distribution. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The timer will go off after 4 minutes, then you will have 1 minute to wrap up your testimony. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the hearing unless the commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Jerry, please call the first public hearing item.
Okay, I'll call the 3 associated items together for a public hearing. Item 3.1A is annexation 19003 to annex approximately 4.5 acres. The associated change of zone 19011 from AG to R1. And the associated waiver 19001 to waive the subdivision improvement requirements, all on property generally located at 6301 North 7th Street. I would note that this is final action on waiver 19001 unless appealed to the city clerk within 14 days. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed?
I don't see any. Do we need to note that Dennis is still recusing himself from this one at this time, or do you want to do it later?
I would note that Commissioner Scheer has declared a conflict of interest on these 3 items.
Rachel?
Rachel Jones, planning staff. These applications include an annexation, a change of zone, and a waiver. The request is to annex the property at 6301 North 7th Street, shown on this exhibit here, which is comprised of one lot. There's not water and sewer in the vicinity of the property at this time, and so there is an accompanying annexation agreement acknowledging that those services are not available to the owner upon annexation. We also have a change of zone request from AG Agriculture to R1 Residential. R1 Residential is our lowest density agriculture district for urban density, and so that zoning district would fit within the acreage character of the area. The property will continue to be served by well and septic systems. There is a related final plat to subdivide this lot into 2 lots. So the existing house that is on the south side of the property would be on 1 lot, and then there is a proposed lot, new residential lot on the north side. And so we have a waiver to the subdivision ordinance that is accompanying this plat, which would waive the typical subdivision requirements associated with a final plat, like street paving, sidewalks, street trees, water and sewer, obviously. Because these streets are actually gravel today, so we have Pennsylvania Avenue, and then this is North 7th Street, and they're both gravel streets. North 7th Street is gravel all the way down to Fletcher Avenue, so it doesn't really make sense to pave them at this time. And the one additional lot that they're creating really doesn't justify it here. And obviously, if we're not requiring paving, it doesn't make sense to require all the other things that go along with improving a street, like sidewalks and street trees. I'll take any questions you might have.
My question deals strictly with the annexation. I know we have a process of looking and reviewing areas that we think should be annexed into the city. I know this is a request of the homeowner, the property owner, so it's their right to ask for this, but I'm curious, how does a single lot annexation affect the neighbors? So is there more pressure on the neighbors to be annexed into the city now that they would be in fact surrounded by the city of Lincoln? They'd have 3 sides surrounding them, and that's one of the criteria we use at looking at future annexations, and I just want to know, does this one request put more pressure on adjacent neighbors?
It doesn't put pressure on them in the sense that that it does not affect their property at all, in a real way. They're not being annexed, their zoning isn't changing. None of the existing conditions out here are changing, except that there's a subdivision proposed with the second residential lot on the north side.
Okay. Does it make it more likely that the city would want to annex the neighbors?
So this area is in a growth area which is growth tier 1, priority B, that we basically have identified as being within the future service limit. And what that means is that it's generally sewerable based on the topography, and the major water and sewer trunk lines are in place to serve the area. And so it is potentially suitable for annexation in the near term. We back in 2017, we annexed the property shown here within the dotted line. That was part of the city city-initiated planning department's annexation study. So we annexed the other lots in this block along Fletcher, along the north side of Fletcher, which are these here.
Right.
And so these other lots, including this one, which is located here, were considered for inclusion in the study at the time. They were not included in the end because they didn't have all the qualities that the properties along Fletcher did. Specifically, there's a water line in Fletcher, and Fletcher is also a paved street. But we certainly would be looking at this area for annexation in the future. Because otherwise it is, like you mentioned, this area is surrounded now on 3 sides by the city limits. It's considered urban in character because of that. And so the property that we're looking at now that's being requested by the owner for annexation is actually one that the city has identified in the comprehensive plan and is considering potentially city-initiated annexation in the future. So those are the reasons why we're looking at it here and would support it in this case.
Rachel, are the surrounding properties Tier 1 Priority B as well?
Yes, they are.
All of them?
Yes, all the ones that are surrounding this one are in the same priority area.
Rachel, it sounds to me like the qualities that you've identified here in the last few minutes pertain to most of everything that we see on the map that you're demonstrating today. Do you think it would be a fair assessment to state that the annexation of this particular property really bears little influence on the potential annexation of neighboring properties, simply because all of these properties have attributes that would eventually make them eligible for annexation?
Yes, that's correct. I would agree with that. It's, in a sense, it's setting a pattern for the area, but that pattern is already designated in the comprehensive plan with the growth tiers and the future land use.
Okay. And then just one last question. Do you have a forecast for when city water and sewer might be extended to this area?
I would not be able to say on that, but I have an exhibit that shows water and sewer locations at the current time. So this is the property we're considering. Water lines are shown in blue and sewer lines are shown in green. And the way that this property would be sewered is that it would be extended from this Heartland Homes development down to this property, since the sewer grades would flow northeast. And those are basically, I believe, it's my understanding that the lines that would be extended to serve this one day are all the smaller private type of mains. They're not the trunk mains, to where it will be pretty dependent on the timing of that other development.
All right.
Short of some other developer coming in and constructing it sooner.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for staff right now? Okay, testimony in support of this application.
Good afternoon. My name's Peter Catt. I am the applicant on behalf of this property. I'm not sure, Commissioner Washington, if there's any policy questions you want me to raise. I can give you the simple answer that I've been a long-time resident of North Lincoln and lived in the Highlands. About a decade ago, I moved on the south side of Lincoln. And over the last 6 years, I've been a commuter to the Omaha market. My son and I bought this property for him because he wanted to be rural in character out on the edge of town. And over the last several years, we've been discussing, I'm getting older, I really don't like the inability to drive from south to north in Lincoln. It's a huge problem. And if I relocate my residence on the north side of town, I save nearly 35 minutes in commute time. I didn't know if my son would really want me to share the same property, but apparently 4.5 acres is a large enough area for us to have our own separate space. So the plan is for me to move back on the north side of town, which I like. The access to downtown is phenomenal. I'll have better commuting. And my wife has compromised. She'll have to now, she likes the stuff on the south side of town. She'll have 30 minutes to go to do what she needs to do on the south side of town. So this is, in my past practice, I've not appeared in front of Planning Commission for years because I've been active up in Omaha. But I'm very familiar with this area, having lived in the Highlands, been a development attorney. I was the attorney that got the Heartland Homes development approved and some of those other ones up there. So these are areas of town. This is a historic, old, large lot area that I think is ripe for redevelopment. This, in and of itself, will not put any added pressure. In my opinion, the city really should aggressively go after these areas because these are areas that take advantage of the city but don't contribute back. But that's a policy issue. We have a very good policy, I think, on how we approach these things. Your planning staff has done a good job on periodically evaluating and then letting the political process play out and balancing the need of people in the neighborhood, acreage, wanting that rural environment versus becoming part of the city. So I don't think this will create any added pressure on there. The pressure exists because of its proximity to Lincoln and the opportunity to really bring this in and make it part of the city at a fairly low cost. And so the real question is, what's the next adjoining property that can connect these to paved streets, water, and sewer? Because it's not been the city's practice to go out and actively go get that done. So I'd ask you to give me an opportunity to build a new house. I didn't really at first like this because I get to pay impact fees to build my new house. I was actually hoping I could be outside of town, but I like being a part of the city of Lincoln. I'd like an opportunity to build a new home up there and get on the north side of town. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
I don't have any questions, but thank you very much for coming forward.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Other testimony in support of these applications? Testimony in opposition? Okay, any staff questions? Applicant, I don't think you'll have a rebuttal then, right? Okay, I would entertain a motion, and I think we have to call for separate motions.
Yes, that is correct. This is on the annexation 19003 to annex approximately 4.5 acres more or less on property generally located at 6301 North 7th Street. Staff recommendation is for conditional approval.
I would move to approve this.
Second.
Jerry?
Okay. Beckius?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Core.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Next item is item 3.1B, change of zone 19011 from AG Agricultural District to R1 Residential District on property generally located at 6301 North 7th Street. Staff recommendation is for approval.
Move conditional approval.
Staff recommendation is for.
Oh, approval.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Second. Edgerton.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Jerry?
Okay. Beckius?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Core.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Item 3.1C is waiver 19001 to waive the subdivision improvement requirements on property generally located at 6301 North 7th Street. Staff recommendation is for conditional approval. This is final action on this item unless appealed to the city council within 14 days.
Go ahead.
I move approval.
Second, Campbell.
Any discussion? Okay, Jerry?
Beckius?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Core.
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. Okay, moving on to public hearing items. Item 4.1A is annexation 19004 to annex approximately 50 acres, more or less, and adjacent rights-of-way for a residential development. The staff recommendation is for conditional approval. The associated change of zone 19012 from AG to R3 and R5 on approximately 50 acres. And, staff recommendation is for approval. Item 4.1C is special permit 19021 to allow for a community unit plan over approximately 50 acres for single-family dwelling units and multiple dwelling units with waivers to increase the height requirement for multiple family dwellings and to exceed the maximum block length of 1,320 feet. All generally located on property at the northeast corner of South 84th Street and Rokeby Road. I would note that the special permit is final action unless appealed to the City Council within 14 days. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
I see none.
Good afternoon, Brian Will, Planning Department. So when this comes up. So we're talking about 3 related applications at South 84th and Rokeby Road. And that's the area surrounded by the dotted line here. We're talking about an area 50 acres in size. The 2 of these applications are talking about the same area, and that is the annexation and the special permit for the community unit plan. They're both over the same area here that is crosshatched. The change zone is just a little bit different. There's a little bit of curve in here, and that there's 2 zoning designations that are involved. So the northern portion here, AG to R3, is over approximately 39 acres, and then this area here, approximately 11 acres, is AG to R5. We'll look at the plan in a little bit, but this is the area where the apartments are going to be and the single-family dwellings are in this area. And so looking at the larger plan, it's proposing a layout for approximately 400 dwelling units. And so this area here has a conventional lot and block layout for 100 lots, and then the apartment buildings down here, the southeast portion, would allow for up to 300 units. Originally, this came in, it was going to be straightforward, just a preliminary plat, annexation and a change of zone. There was no community unit plan involved, but it is actually the height waiver that's involved with the apartments down here. The only mechanism that we have one of the 2 mechanisms we have is the community unit plan. Otherwise, you can't adjust that height. So there's a height waiver for the apartments to go from 35 feet to 55 feet. Maybe just talking about these applications individually, just briefly. So big picture, overall, again, we're talking about this area right here. So for the purpose of the annexation, this property is contiguous to the city limit. The utilities are all available. We've got city water in South 84th Street, city sewer, which is coming up the drainage here, which is in South 84th Street. Can be served by all city utilities, otherwise meets the annexation policy, and so we're recommending conditional approval of that. That is, there will be associated annexation agreement to cover a few related items, and one of them being revising the site plan to make sure that the right-of-way for a roundabout in Rokeby Road is shown. Okay. For the change of zone then, again, coming back, this is an excerpt from the future land use map, and so the yellow areas are designating development consistent with urban density residential, which the proposed layout does do. So R1 through the R5 zoning would certainly meet that. This I note that this red area here indicates commercial development. So you'll note there's about, I don't know, 15 to 20 acres left out of this development. Well, that's where this commercial area is shown. So nothing's happening there yet. It's not being annexed yet, it's not being rezoned yet, but we'd anticipate that sometime in the future it would. Okay, so we find that the change of zone then is consistent with the comprehensive plan as well. Looking at the site plan, which, like I said, initially was pretty straightforward. There is the one waiver, and that relates to the apartment units here. Because this, now what's been shown here around the edge are conceptual layouts for how adjacent properties could develop. We don't know that that's the case or not, but could be single family. And so relative to the apartment layout, the planning department is suggesting that these buildings adjacent to that east lot line be limited to 3-story apartment buildings. Again, if they're adjacent to single-family residential, that provides some sort of a transition from the taller buildings to the single-family buildings. The only other issue here really was providing the roundabout, the required right-of-way for the roundabout here. I'd note that then, since all of this was sort of buttoned up and put in the mail, there has been a change relative to, I think, the siting of this roundabout. And so have talked with the applicant, who has been in conversation with other owners in the area, and I think he's going to talk about that briefly. I think it does result in some minor changes to the layout here, but I'll let him go ahead and talk about that, and we can come back and visit that issue. So otherwise, we find that this also meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance comprehensive plan, recommending conditional approval of that as well. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Sandra?
I do. Could you show block 2, 6, and 7? The shading made it difficult for me to
Yes.
see which block was which.
It's this block, and then this block. This is 2 and 6 and 7, or 6 and 7.
Okay.
But it's this, and this.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I did sort of make kind of a big deal in the report about that, talked about it a bit. So this block here, which has the potential to be, well, both of them very long, a street connection will be shown as part of this development here, somewhere maybe in this vicinity here. Has spoken to the engineering company for the developer, the owner of the property to the north, and let them know that when this plan comes in, we will be asking them to then show a street connection somewhere in this location here. They acknowledge that and did not seem to have any opposition to that as well.
So you're asking that the owner to the north provide the street connection for 7?
Yes.
Across block 7?
Yes.
And are you asking this
Yes.
applicant to come across 6?
Yes, and
Okay.
this developer
Okay.
solves a problem on one of them. The developer to the north will solve it for the other one. So we thought that was equitable. Each one of them provides a street connection, solves that block length issue there.
Brian, in regards to the roundabout on Rokeby Road, I'm assuming it's a little further west than it would have ordinarily been sited. Is that correct? Or maybe that's a question for Bob.
Okay, we're all, does anybody know, you can just yes or no? Is that, well, he can answer
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Thanks, Brad.
It's in a slightly different, yeah.
Did you have a question, Maya?
Yeah, so, I'm sorry if I missed this, but are you saying the applicant is no longer asking for the block length waiver? after you
Technically,
discuss
they're-
this, or are they
technically,
still
they're-
asking for it and you're recommending denial?
Nope, we're supporting this 100%. Technically, there's no block length waiver here because the block doesn't exceed it as it is.
Okay,
It's shown, the way it's shown to continue beyond, then we know there's gonna be an issue. So proactively, this developer will take care of it for one block. The other guy to the north has been given advance notice. They're gonna be asked to take care of it on the other block, okay? The one block waiver that is, one block waiver that does exist is in block 2 along the drainage. However, the ordinance says for those that exist along some sort of drainage or natural feature like that, essentially you don't have to grant a waiver for that. That is justification for having an overlock.
so you're asking, you're still recommending that we deny? No?
Nope.
Approved.
Approve it as it is, subject to the conditions as they're listed, and we'll all be fine.
Was that the new
They're
amended?
gonna have to revise this plan subject to the conditions, okay? And so they will be adding a street connection here.
Okay, so am I looking at an old staff report then?
Well, and there's an amendment.
Is it in the amendment that you sent? Is that,
No.
Nope.
On the first page of the staff report, it does say recommend denial on the bottom of the block length. I think it's probably a type.
It's because I couldn't say recommend approval, because,
yeah,
I'm sorry,
Okay, I'm
and maybe I
sorry.
didn't,
I'm very
yeah, maybe I
literal.
didn't explain it well,
Yeah.
right? That's probably, yeah,
Okay,
You're recommending the waiver.
yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
sorry.
very well.
Are you clear? Is everybody clear, though?
Yes, I just want to know
Okay.
what I'm voting on.
Yes, yeah.
So-
So the waiver is really just for block 7.
Uh,
Well, you said that it's not really past the 1,320, so.
Yeah,
It's really for, you're just making note that
I'm just-
they're coming close, and block 2, if it had not been been along a natural drainage, would require a
would
waiver.
require otherwise, right.
I want to
So
ask,
actually, technically, there is no block length waiver.
needed,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, so it was requested in the letter, and lacking some better way to address it. Right, I wasn't gonna say approval, because that's not right.
It's really
So-
not applicable.
Perhaps I didn't explain it in the body of the report well enough. That's my fault. That's the case.
It raises a question for me.
Okay.
In the remainder of the section, you indicated that the applicant has control over those acres that are not yet designated, but shown that they would be commercial. That
Yes,
empty,
right in
yeah,
the
that
corner.
area?
Yep.
So I am curious, would we ask for any kind of, I guess it's not the waiver, but would we ask for some way for folks to access across that drainage once the commercial is developed, so that there is pedestrian or bike access? So you don't have to get in a car and drive all the way around it?
Through,
Across the drainage?
somewhere through this area here.
Yeah,
Well, there is a pedestrian,
I see the outlot,
yes,
okay. Is
there's a
that,
pedestrian easement shown here.
mm-hmm,
So, depending upon how this outlot is platted,
mm-hmm,
it would allow access across it,
okay.
okay? So, yes, good question.
All right, thank you.
And Brian, I'm assuming that the city of Lincoln anticipates surplusing the property to the north.
Okay.
Is that correct?
There is an exchange, there's a land exchange in process,
Okay. Which,
property to the north, right.
okay, which would designate it as residential use, I assume?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and so
Okay.
it's gonna come in probably some pattern similar to what's shown here, but
Sure, sure.
probably not exactly.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions for Brian? Okay, thanks, Brian.
Okay.
Testimony in support, or, excuse me, we're not there yet. Testimony from the applicant.
Good afternoon. My name is Brad Marshall with Olson. I'm here on behalf of Lincoln Federal Bancorp. They are the current owners of the property bringing forward for the annexation change of zone and CUP. Approximately 50 acres is being included, as Brian stated, and did a great job of explaining kind of where we are today. The annexation really is in accordance with the Rokeby Road Coalition annexation agreement. There will have to be, as I understand it, we're working with staff, one small change, an amendment to that, which basically accommodates responsibilities for off-site improvements, both to 84th and to Rokeby Road. There are some improvements. 84th, South 84th Street is an unimproved arterial roadway. It's a rural section road, which the developer will install left and right turn lanes to improve safety. And Rokeby Road is what I call kind of interim improved arterial roadway where right and left turn lanes will be installed. Those will be reimbursable, impact fee reimbursable. So annexation fee will be amended to reflect that. The change of zone, again, it's pretty straightforward. R3 and R5. R5 to accommodate the apartment multifamily area. Approximately 300 units on that. The waiver for the density, well, not necessarily the density, the waiver for the height. I think we think that that's an agreeable solution where those buildings on the east side would be limited to 3-story. I think in our minds we were thinking about 3 stories anyway on that, but we kind of get above the limitations of for the height limitation of 35 feet on 3-story with the architecture and slope roofs and so forth. So we pretty much ask for that almost as a standard anymore for multifamily. The CUP application, trying to think here, Brian has stated, I think, some really good questions as to the layout. It's pretty straightforward. We have been working with, the land to the north is being developed or in transition period. I believe it's actually owned by the city of Lincoln currently. Kruger Development is looking at a future development of that property. We have been in contact with their engineers for the layout. That's kind of the basis where we started with the roadway connections, the lot layouts, the north and to the east. So we have coordinated those abutments and connections of roadways. We do understand, and we had originally come forward with the waiver to the block length, knowing that might precipitate the planning department to say, okay, there's really long block lengths that exceed our requirements, and to come up with a solution. Brian offered a couple of solutions. We found that adding a street connection on one of the 2 blocks in question is an amenable solution to that. So we're very much in support in adding that to our overall plan. The drainage way we've tried to maintain, it is a corridor. The upper wagon trail study that was done in coordination with the Rokeby Road Coalition identified that as a minimum corridor. It's a 78 feet wide. We'll protect that, except for the one crossing. We'll utilize it for water quality as well and implement it in our overall drainage analysis. There was quite a bit of discussion, I should say, on the roundabout and what was going to be required at the 88th Street crossing. The coalition on the west side has provided those roundabouts in the right-of-way, and thus we are agreeing to provide the right-of-way for those. As I said, it's kind of an interim. We'll add the left and right turn lanes now, and then the city will come forward in the future and install that roundabout when that is warranted to be upgraded there. I do want to address something that came up upon the public notification. The 84th Street connection currently is shown as a roundabout. The 2 owners are on the west side that are also part of the coalition. That's kind of nice. We can kind of talk about this in coordination with other members within the coalition. Kruger Development had approached us about the actual location. We had developed this plan off an approved City of Lincoln grade study that shows the location of those access points. We had been approached just days prior that it may make sense to move that location to the quarter section line, which is about 30 feet to the south. We have looked, we've discussed with our client about a potential shift and how it may impact their overall layout. I think we're agreeable to this. We have made a couple of changes, but what we presented to Brian just this morning was a new layout, and I will share that with you now. Let's see. I want to show you first. This is the current site plan. I'll say, in the northwest corner there is a cul-de-sac with single-family lots around it, and as kind of mirrored on the other side, there's single-family lots there as well. What we have looked at is shifting that down, kind of makes some unusually deep and lots and a lot of open space on the north side. So we have presented an option to shift the roadway, which would accommodate the request by Kruger Development into I'm hitting the wrong button here. Into a layout that's not a cul-de-sac anymore, but it's a through street, and instead of single-family homes, townhome units. So it's a little pocket we thought may be appropriate at the entranceway. May have townhomes off to the side, single-family, nothing really else in the development is impacted by this. And even, I might even show you this. We had even added a street connection here as part of our kind of ongoing conceptual layout of the lots. That will have to probably shift a lot south, or we might move it over to the other block. We've been talking about this block length issue to accommodate it. So really the question is if we get back to Brian and how we accommodate this. I do want to say that being on the section line, you're really impacting two owners on the west side. It is Kruger Development and it's SSAR. I think I'm saying that right, LLC. We did contact one of the partners. There's two partners in that ownership, and they did indicate they had been talking with Kruger Development about that change, and then they were okay with it. So it seems as though we have three parties here that are willing to make the change for that access location and shift. So we may have to talk about how we move forward with this. If I have to ask for a change on the condition, like a conditional approval of the site plan changes here, because this hasn't really, this is new to you, this is new to staff as well, and I think we've talked to the parties. I think we've introduced it enough in a high enough manner that I think we're meeting the same requirements that have been kind of introduced to the Planning Commission here today. So with that, I'd be very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
You're not asking us to defer, though. You would like us to vote on this today?
I asked that same question of Brian this morning because it feels like this has all happened very fast. I don't want to rush anybody on this. I'm very willing to work with staff, with LTU, to make sure that they're not opposed to street connections that are being too close to 84th Street and any other concerns that they may have. Grading and drainage is always a big issue with changing lot layouts and where those lots are going to drain in the future. So I did ask Brian if we should just walk in and ask for a deferral. He thought that we could probably, this isn't a gigantic change, we're not massively changing blocks within the development, that we could probably work upon with staff, and if we had a conditional approval, we'd move forward and meet with staff and see if we could work this out.
And I'm assuming, Brad, that, I'm sorry, were you done?
Yes.
Okay. I'm assuming, Brad, that the change is to give Kruger a little bit more wiggle room there on the west side. Is that correct?
I think so. We did contact the coalition engineer as well, CDG. The indication was, well, originally when they put this together, which was some time ago, that the shift to the north side was implemented into that plan because that may give him the ability to control the development, bring that on a little bit faster without cooperation of the owner to south. So if he wanted to build the road, he could build the road and make connection. I don't know when that was done, but I think that now that they have talked about this between those two owners, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking on their behalf, but I think we've heard that, yeah, we're okay with it. We talked, and if this is on the section line, that may be a fair deal between the two developers. The west side, I may know just enough to be dangerous here, but there are commercial designations on the west side which would open a little bit more property for Kruger development, and the other property owner would accommodate with the shift of the roadway. So.
Sure. So, and then the question on the roundabout on Rokeby Road, or where the proposed roundabout would go eventually, one day.
Yep.
It looks like it's shifted a little bit over to the west, which is not, I think is fine. Just the quick question I have for you is it looks like your neighbor to the east would have plenty of frontage on Rokeby Road to have their own full access roundabout as opposed to a right in, right out. So I think that looks fine. Only question I have for you, Brad, it's minor and I kind of hesitate even to bring it up. Could you tell me about the road that is shown in between the two apartment pad sites? The only reason I bring it up is because I wonder if eventually your neighbors to the east, when that gets developed, that's going to be the fastest way for them to get out of their neighborhood to a full access roundabout on Rokeby, at least probably half of the development to the east. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that road. It looks like a pretty average city street. Is that correct? And how do you, I know we're a little preliminary here, but how do you see the interface between those two pad sites with the city street running between them?
Good question. I might take on the roundabout on Rokeby first.
Sure.
There's a little bit of backstory to this. We had initiated design and conceptual work off of a grade study that was completed. We actually introduced it. We obtained a survey and found that the islands were actually shifted a little bit off the grade study that were constructed and improved, 2 years ago. And so we did a little bit deeper dig on this and contacted this coalition engineer. And in the annexation agreement, it specifies access locations. And in that document, they actually shifted it from the grade study. It actually moves it to the east into the apartment layout that we have currently shown. As you can see, here's the opening, and we had it shifted. It was approximately 40 feet, 40, 50 feet to the west. So we kicked that around internally with the client, and we decided, well, if that's the location, we've got a property owner to the south, which is part of the coalition, and they had all agreed that those were the locations, and so we have agreed as part of this to shift and match that location. And then that's where the roundabout will be also. So two little changes, I guess, to this site plan when it's finally approved would be, one, it's shifting to the east, and two, we have a roundabout which has a little bit larger footprint there. In order to meet block length. We did include, where this first concept was, we had, about a 10-acre apartment complex. Well, we actually presented it that way, hoping that we didn't have to bisect a property with a public roadway. Planning had asked that we revise it. We kind of knew that was probably the appropriate thing to do, as opposed to have a block length waiver here. Like you said, there's going to be something developed. Right now, it's designated as residential, and having access to that side of the property is probably appropriate. So it's a standard section, 27-foot wide city street, if you will, bisecting it. One of the conditions of approval is to actually provide additional setbacks off of that roadway, so what you have shown for parking and so forth is a lot closer than what it will be. Those parking lots will probably shift another 10 or 15 feet off the road and provide setbacks. So we are, I should say, working closely designating plans and so forth with the engineers, working on that side of things. We've shown them this. I haven't heard anything specific about any concerns. Kruger is possibly developing this part as well, as we're working with their engineer. And it's quite possible that they do maybe just start over here, or they jump around a little bit. I don't know, but I don't see any potential issue with connectivity and them utilizing that access through to get back to that full access. If that's really your
the
question.
connectivity I think is great, and I think makes sense. The only, just this street smack dab in the middle of the two apartment sites, the only thing I worry about is parking on the street, and then how that potentially limits access through, should we have parking on both sides of that street, if we're talking about a 27-foot wide section.
I would
Thank
probably,
because
we talk about this a lot with parking and parking requirements, and,
Right. And
public ways, they are public streets. The developer couldn't initiate no parking on one side of the street or both sides. You're right, it's open. It can only be initiated, from my understanding, by Public Works to prohibit parking there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but I'm going to go back to just a question on deferral. So I just want to make sure, on the special permit, since it's final action with us, and obviously we're we haven't even gotten to opposition or support, or, we're still, but I just want to make sure that you don't, give away one of your public process avenues to present, and if you don't come to a full agreement with planning, when you're here, you can at least have a shot, if you can't agree, to present it to us.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that we're not taking that away. Obviously, I would, if you want to vote, I think you're entitled to a vote, and I just want to make sure that that's all good, and we're not taking that away from the applicant.
Given where we are today, and I just, before we kicked off this discussion, had a conversation with the Kruger development representative, and I think we could move forward. I think they don't have any objections. They've seen the site plan now. I do certainly appreciate this because, well, it's us at stake and not them, I guess, too.
It just doesn't go on to the city council, sometimes there are
Right.
you can work things out along the way. This one's kind of over.
I do want to make sure we do have all our bases covered as far as the little flexibility of items. We're not talking 100 lots now, we're talking, 110 possibly with the increase of townhomes. I think if Brian's okay with that, excuse me, if Brian's comfortable on the planning side, that we have that flexibility to make those changes after that they are that minor enough that we can get by that. I do want to point out, and that's maybe where a sticking point is, we did ask and point out that we would require a design waiver to street radius. What we have shown is smaller than the design standards allow, and if we needed to get that included too. So I'm impartial, I should say, to exactly if we need to button this up. I certainly can get it in writing and bring back in 2 weeks on a deferral. I'm certainly okay with that. And I will say I'm okay also as long as we have this discussion in front of you, that if we need a design waiver request now for radiuses, and we get that included, or if planning has the ability to approve that, or engineering services and LTU has that ability. So
We'll have an opportunity to ask staff questions too, and then you will have some, if something changes between now and your rebuttal, just let us know.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's going to be important for us to try to figure out how to say in a motion with essentially an amendment to the conditions to have some flexibility. You guys might start thinking about that now, how we say that. Because I think everybody needs to, be able to feel good about this. Can I ask one other question? If you can flip the image to the northwest corner of the development, and the modified proposal of doing townhomes in that corner. This is probably more speculative than we need to be, but could that possibly have any kind of a impact, negative or positive, but change to how that land to the north is being thought about now in these early stages? Townhomes next to single family, sometimes we hear that there are issues with that. Is it too early to worry about that, or is that something that?
I can only share with you what I've seen from the layouts to the north. I think you can probably see it kind of lightened out, but they are single-family lots on a cul-de-sac that would be backing that up to the north. We're showing single-family directly to the east, which would be in cooperation. I can almost guarantee you this is not the final layout. We'll tweak it here and there. We'll get these to where the developer is comfortable on lot sizing and make sure that it fits into what we have shown for the rest of the development with single family. Historically, Lincoln Federal has lots that are a little bit bigger than average, not huge, but just on the upper end, I guess. And townhomes that they've done recently, are between 40 and 50 feet and not 30 feet, if you will. So we'll likely move in that direction where ultimately you won't have townhomes upon townhomes backing single-family residences to the north. So I don't think it would have.
You don't see an
huge
issue
impact.
there, okay.
Yeah.
Dick?
There's two questions I have. Where is, in the documents, is the agreement that the apartments on the east would be only 3-story?
That is actually a condition of approval in the staff report.
Okay, and then on that, the previous one that you had up there, you're showing another roundabout to that commercial property and to the south. The previous one that showed that's the roundabouts on Rokeby. Yeah.
There.
There's a right in, right out, is that correct? And then a space for a roundabout?
Yeah. So the future commercial area, there is an access located at the 8th mile location. It is right in, right out. And then I think you're specifying, we have yet to show that on the submittal documents, but there will be a roundabout at 88th Street in Rokeby.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. This regards the apartment buildings on the east side If you would expand that, I have a question. So I count 3 apartment buildings on that east edge. 2 are aligned north-south and 1 is aligned east-west. Would the east-west building also be at 35 feet? That's the one further north?
I would have to defer to planning as to their intent of their condition of approval on that.
Okay, I will hold the question for planning on that one. And then I had a question about the townhomes in the northwest sector of your proposal today, and their potential impact on drainage. There's a lot more flushing happening, a lot more drains happening when you put in townhomes.
Yes, the density in the impervious area will be increased as opposed to a single-family home. You have more homes and driveways and so forth. We did, as part of this, again, going through this iteration and see if the owner would be willing to accept the changes with the shift and modifying it. The grades there relatively will not change dramatically from what was submitted. Most of this drains to the south. It drains, I should point out, the coalition has master planned the drainage detention, and the detention cell for the first phases of development over here are actually on the property to the north. And then once we hit between the different coalition members, once they hit a threshold, then the second detention cell has to be constructed actually on the south side of Rokeby and 84th Street. But we, as developing this property, we still need to meet water quality standards. And this triangle here, and then this area, oh, you can't see that. But on the east side of 88th Street roadway crossing, excuse me, right here, I'm pointing at a road there. Those are going to be saved for water quality. And so to answer your question, that still will go through a designated water quality detention area. I believe, even with the densities that we're looking at for multifamily and townhomes, and then the rest of the single family, that will meet the drainage study conditions, I should say. So they look at it as an overall and kind of take an average and have to make certain assumptions up for their study. And that's actually one of the comments that through this study for the drainage that was actually submitted, and so we'll provide that information that we are meeting those requirements.
Okay, and then one last comment. It's not so much a question. I know that Dennis had raised the issue about sort of the social interactions between townhomes and single family, and I would just note that in that proposed area that you've drafted, it looks like there's the potential for 5 backyards to abut 1 backyard. And that's a lot of neighbors to manage if there's a conflict. I would encourage you to resolve that one so that there's fewer neighbors for one single-family homeowner to talk to if they have a fence issue or something. That's a lot of people.
Understood. Thank you.
Other questions for Brad? Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
So we have testimony in support of this item, or these 3 items. We'll do testimony in support and testimony in opposition for all 3 items. So testimony in support of any or all of these items. Testimony in opposition for any or all of these items. Okay. We have staff questions, I assume? Yes?
Yes.
Should I start? Just kind of looking at it, I know it's just kind of maybe happened recently, but does it look like something that can easily be resolved within the framework of what we're voting on today?
We got it early this morning, and so, yeah, we've had a chance to look at it and visit about it, and the planning department doesn't believe that these are changes that are significant enough that requires some sort of delay in an entire review. What we're suggesting is that you could make it, just add to the conditions, another condition of approval. That, because if let's say it gets approved today, they have to resubmit later on to staff, showing plans that meet all of the conditions of approval, okay? So they have to do that anyway. We're suggesting another condition could be added that says, and they revise the plan generally consistent with the concept that Brad put on the overhead today showing the relocated roundabout, and we will review it for compliance with that. So planning, public works, watershed, everybody will have a look at that and make sure that it meets whatever standards apply. And we don't think that that is a big enough change that it warrants any total overhaul or re-review the process.
And because this is final action, in the unlikely case that you couldn't come to an agreement on the new site plan, would their avenue be to appeal then? Appeal their
Well, I
own
guess-
yes, and say we're changing it, and we, if they wanted to force another, public
When you say
process.
they, you mean the applicant?
Yeah.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is we don't have any issue with it.
Okay.
So I don't think there's any disagreement.
Okay.
I mean, the site plan, I mean, there's some advantages to it. I mean, on the one hand, the cul-de-sac is being eliminated. I mean, not that there's anything inherently bad about cul-de-sacs, right? But, so you're adding some increased density here. You've got another housing type being injected into this development. So I don't see an issue.
Okay.
All right.
And by the way, that's not just Brian. I mean, we've talked
We're
internally.
all-
Okay, yes, so.
Makes me feel good.
No one's flinging eye daggers at you that you
Yep,
can't.
so far, I'm still standing, so.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I have a question about the height of the apartment building, the one that's aligned east-west
Yep,
on the north end of the development. Can you tell me if that's one that you had envisioned at 35 feet?
no, we're just talking about the two that are, if I can find a plan. I mean, we're really just talking about the two, because we're talking about, you know, the length of, those buildings and the scale of it at an increased height, and potentially what, yeah, mine's shaded here, I'm sorry, but, so the three buildings you're talking about are, so you've got one, two, three.
Right.
Well, it's these two areas. You got the full length of the buildings adjacent to one. Those were the only two that we're talking about. Not this one, because you've just got essentially the width of the building here, and then the majority of it projecting westward. So we weren't talking about that one.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Okay, I just want to throw out then one last thing before so I did send out that brief memo earlier today. And so it was just a minor change to add on a date to that condition 2.1.10, I believe that it was. That was at the applicant's request, just to make sure we understand what comments it is from watershed management that we're talking about. So
Right.
fairly simple. So, okay. So, so like I said, if you choose to, if you chose to proceed today, and with the site plan that was shown by the applicant, conceptually, like I said, one way to do that would be to just add a condition that says at the time of resubmittal of revised plans, that it generally conform to that concept plan, and staff is fine with that.
Okay,
Okay,
we'll try to figure out how to say that.
okay.
And those aren't powers that the planning director has already?
Well, I think for everybody's benefit, I think for the applicant, but the other property owners involved, I believe Kruger Development wants to sort of have some sort of assurance that this roundabout is going to move, okay? So added as a condition like that, I think this ensures that it will. So the applicant is agreeable to it, we're agreeable to it, and so those other owners that did want it to move, I think this gives them some assurance that it will. Okay. I was just going to mention, nobody asked us one other thing. So there was a question raised about the design standard. Those can be approved administratively. Okay? Those don't have to be approved by the planning commission. So here again, when we're looking at those revised plans, if there's a design standard, that can be through the process recommended by Public Works for approval and approved by the planning director if that's what we all find to be the right thing to do, which that may well be it. So
Okay.
we can take care of that administratively as well.
Very good. Thanks.
Okay.
Brad, do you have anything you want to rebut?
Is there anything else in the conditions that should go away if the site plan is revised? Some of you who know better than I do about development.
I really wonder if the planning director doesn't have the power to make these modifications on their own, assuming that they generally conform to what's been approved by us.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps we need a break. We can take a break if needed, Brad.
I don't think so. I was just trying to clarify something with Brian as to comment that was made on the pedestrian access. So, and I can share that with you. My interpretation is up to today. There was the question if people live in those single family homes and the commercial development did build out, how can they get there instead of walking down the street and down 88th Street? Right now, we do not show a connection. It is an open corridor.
Sure.
And so I wanted to make sure that Brian was comfortable because right now, that outlot is relatively just utilized for overflow of drainage. It's 30 feet wide where drainage is be able to go over that.
The length there, Brad? Guesstimate for me the length of the block that we're talking about, where we, in theory, should be having that connection to the commercial. I mean, are we at 1, 2, 3, 4?
Well, if you use Rokeby as a benchmark, you have the right in, right out at 1/8 of a mile and 88th of a quarter.
Okay. And what do we have, is that a drainage? What do we have closer to the cul-de-sac on the west of that block? Showing an outlot, is that correct?
The outlot, yes, so storm piping
Okay.
will be going through there.
Okay.
We do have it designated as a pedestrian access, but just that outlet. So mainly, it's just there so that maintenance, mowers and so forth can go down and get down at that location.
So no plans at this point to improve that green space or anything like that for,
Not with
Uses.
sidewalks or walkways or trails or anything like that, no.
okay.
Okay.
Anything else for Brad?
Would you like to opine on the condition?
I think we're comfortable enough. Like, he answered my one question, if they can administratively approve the design standards, because we know we're gonna have to work with, on them on that. And so I think this is good. It kind of came very quickly, and we don't like doing that at all. But I think we've got parties agreeable to make the change and make the shift and make everybody happy on this. And it may benefit my client, the owner of the property, such that it may present another opportunity for those townhome units. So.
But generally, the way that Brian kind of framed it,
Yes.
a revised plan, that's in line with the conceptual plan that you showed us today is,
I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable.
okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Okay, so I think we're ready to entertain a motion. We need to call these separately.
That is correct.
So let's start with the annexation.
I move approval of the annexation 19004.
Second, Campbell.
Conditional approval?
Conditional approval, thank you.
Discussion?
This is simple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I agree. So I think we can vote on this
Okay.
pretty easily.
Conditional approval of annexation 19004. Beckius?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Core?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Motion carried 8-0.
Okay, we'll go to the change of zone.
Move approval, Core.
Second, Beckius.
Discussion? Okay, I think we're on the same
Okay, this is
path as before.
for approval of change of zone 19012. Beckius?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Core?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes,
Motion carried 8-0.
and now the special permit.
When we're left speechless, I believe that we defer to our chair.
I'll move approval, but I'd like somebody more familiar with development to help me phrase the condition, just.
Right, so I think we have,
So,
well, let's get a sec, did we get a second?
But I move
You-
approval on
you-
somebody friendly, or a
Second.
friendly
Okay,
amendment.
let's get a second.
Yeah.
Okay, now,
Second,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
okay,
Joy?
Okay.
now let's discuss. So let's figure out, so that we all have a role in this. It sounds to me like we have two conditions that need to be added or amended. One is the note that Brian sent the memo about this morning. That needs to go in, and then the other one is this design variance or,
So I'll amend my motion to include Brian's revision.
okay,
and-
second?
Friendly?
Okay, friendly.
And then, I just don't know how to word what you said in a
Subject to
proper way,
this,
but I want to do it.
There's a couple key words I think we'd want to make sure are in there, and I don't think it has to be all that complicated, but we could say that, subject to a revised site plan generally consistent with that, provided by the applicant.
And that's a new condition.
That's a
Okay.
new condition, so. it'd
I have
be-
added a new condition to accept or to revise the site plan generally consistent with the conceptual plan shown today.
Yes.
That-
And I think that gets, it leaves the generally consistent, leaves a little bit of wiggle room should we find that we need it for some reason, okay?
Okay,
But that plan presented today to the planning commission, that's the plan that we're talking about.
Do you need that as an amendment to the
Well,
motion?
A
Is that-
friendly, you want to make
yeah,
a friendly amendment?
are you good with that? You good with,
good,
okay,
I'm good with that motion as a
And
second, yeah.
just for clarification, that does not excuse any of the site-specific conditions that are in the original. Okay?
no.
no,
Then-
it wouldn't. That's why we
No,
did
the-
that's why we did the motion first.
Motion and then amend. All right.
Okay, so we need to, further discussion on this, because we'll be voting for each amendment, right? We won't vote as just one vote here,
We
we'll have
just
three
do
votes.
both amendments together.
If it's
Can we do both?
friendly,
Different.
Yeah, it's friendly, yeah. you
Okay, very
can
good.
do them both.
Okay. Other discussion?
No, I think this subdivision is a nice consideration of the marketplace, and I think that especially with the addition or the potential addition of townhome units really offers a varied concept for housing in this area.
I just want to say that I think it's great that when we have this coalition kind of arrangement, and you as the lead engineer for this piece of this property, working with the other engineers and just making it all sort of way ahead of the game, work well. I commend you on that. I think it's really a great process.
Right, and I really appreciate that the planners came together as well and brought together the other property owners. I think that shows the collaboration that this city has become known for, and we really appreciate that.
I would just echo what, we got so caught up in the details, but echo what Commissioner Becky said, that this, especially this conceptual site plan, really gives a lot of housing choice.
Right.
Which is consistent with the comp plan, and I think something that people are looking for, so.
Yep, very good. Ready to vote? Let's vote.
Okay, I'm going to read this back. This is an amendment to special permit 19021 to amend condition 2.110 to make revisions and corrections for public works and utilities watershed management as noted in the review and red line comments in project docs by adding as of May 7th, 2019. And to add a condition to revise the plan generally consistent with the conceptual plan shown today.
Okay, sounds good.
Can I have that motion made by Harris, seconded by Joy?
Correct.
Okay. Beckius?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Shear?
Yes.
Motion carried, 7-0. And then we need to call, or have a motion to approve as amended, special permit 19021.
So moved. Campbell.
Second. Edgerton.
Thank you.
I think we had, I think
No.
the motion was already on the table.
It was already,
Oh, then,
Moved
yeah.
and seconded by
Okay,
the
so
same
we did
people.
all the
We did
amendments.
all this. Yeah,
Okay,
we did.
all right, very good.
Yep, we're good.
All right, I think we're good.
Okay, I think we can vote on that one.
No,
there's no need for a
I don't
vote.
think
There's
we
no
need
need
to
for another vote.
We made it with one
okay.
vote. It's all together.
friendly.
You're right. Friendly, you're right. Okay. very
But I
good.
know that we like to vote together, so.
We just like to vote.
Vote on something.
We feel like we've accomplished something if
I
we're
just need
voting.
to say one other thing, and that is that if anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda, if you want to do that, you may do so now. I see none, so we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.